Good morning, everyone. I'm Mario Turco, the Director of Education for the Algoma District School Board. Very pleased to be here with you this morning. Oh, hang on a minute. Hello? This is Sault, Space Station. You're looking for Dr. Bondar? She's in a White Pines Collegiate this morning, addressing a wonderful group of young ladies and gentlemen. She's too busy right now to get to the phone. Can have her call you later on this morning. I can? Thank you. That reminds me, can everybody shut off their cell phones, please? Make sure if your cell phone is on that you turn it off. We're still waiting as people coming in, so I'm going to talk a little bit. Just a reminder that there are going to be about 800 people in here this morning. And we're telecasting this live right across Sault Ste. Marie in all our schools and all 3 school boards. So we'll have to stay as quietly as possible in here so that no one misses anything. And I want to welcome everybody this morning as we wait for a few more to join us. As I mentioned, we have people here from every school in the city of Sault Ste. Marie. We're webcasting it to those schools this morning. I'm assuming that they're hearing me now, Dan. Thank you very much. I want to thank Dan Wood-Solomon and Tony Pucci and Greg Marshall and Ron Flint and Janice Irvin and Derek Warmington and Carol Robinson from the 3 school boards making this possible. And I understand we even have some assistance from Toronto to make sure that we have enough bandwidth to webcast this across our schools. For the schools outside Sault Ste. Marie, we're videotaping it this morning, and we'll make it available to those schools in the next week or so. Mr. George, I think we got everybody here now? Okay, thank you. By the way, happy birthday, Sault Ste. Marie. We're celebrating the 100th anniversary of Sault Ste. Marie incorporated into the wonderful city of Sault Ste. Marie. We're very, very blessed to live in Sault Ste. Marie. Although last night I was a little worried because, the weather was turning on us, and I certainly didn't want all the buses being canceled this morning and that you couldn't be here. But the weather cooperated and you are here. And so, anyway, we're celebrating the 100th anniversary. It's a wonderful occasion. We want to thank the city of Sault Ste. Marie for partnering with the 3 school boards to make this wonderful event possible. It's a great opportunity for us to be here this morning to introduce and to hear our wonderful, wonderful guests. We are naturally gifted, and it's wonderful to have people like Dr. Roberta Bondar representing us across the world and in space. So, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We'll maybe start with, we'll ask you to stand, and we'll start with the playing of O Canada. can have some lights on the front row here, and maybe that front row, I'm going to introduce some special guests. If we can't, that's fine. I'll just ask people to stand and remain standing until I've introduced everybody. First of all, representing the Huron Superior Catholic District School Board is Superintendent Maria Esposito. Representing the Conseil Scolaire Catholique de Nouvelle-Ontario is the Principal of Notre Dame, Giselle Lamy. And three students who are going to be assisting us later today, representing St. Basil Secondary School, is J.P. Stefanizzi. Representing White Pines Collegiate is Taylor Gerling. And representing Notre Dame de Grand Lac is Alexandra Finley. Hey, I'm not just an Italian, okay? Also here, representing the city of Sault Ste. Marie, and a person who has been responsible for coordinating and chairing the Celebrate 100-year anniversary of Sault Ste. Marie and putting this wonderful event together. It's Councillor Susan Meyer. Would you welcome Susan Meyer to come up to the microphone, please? Susan, would you come up and just bring greetings from the city and tell us a little bit about this 100th anniversary?
Thank you, Mario. Good morning, everyone. Just on behalf of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, Mayor Amoroso, members of City Council, I want to welcome you here this morning. This is just terrific. We know our community is in great hands when we look out on this sea of faces and see the enthusiasm and the interest in being here this morning. We thank you for that. Dr. Bondar is an inspiration to all of us, and you're going to hear a little bit more from her in a few minutes. And we just ask that you would give that your full attention. And on behalf of City Council, we want to invite all of the community to be involved in Celebrate 100. Sault Ste. Marie is celebrating an anniversary on April 16th. It will be our 100th year since we were incorporated as a city. Lots of good things going on. We have some of our staff team over here, Donna Irving, our project manager. Anything you want to know about Celebrate 100, be sure and check with Donna. Have a great morning, and thanks for being here.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, and thank you for making this possible. We really appreciate it. It was a lot of hard work, but I think this is going to be a great event today. And I'm sorry, I want to introduce Donna Irving, who's the project manager. Donna, stand up and be recognized. Okay. Dreams do come true. It's indeed my real pleasure to introduce our very special guest speaker, Dr. Roberta Bondar. We are very pleased and honored to be in the presence of a person who was born and raised in Sault Ste. Marie and is recognized world over as the first Canadian woman astronaut and the first neurologist in space. She is recognized and highly regarded as an author, environmental educator, a celebrated photographer, and a leading speaker and consultant within the medical, the scientific, and the education communities on social responsibilities and care for the Earth's environment. We're very proud of Dr. Bondar, and it is a great honor to have her here with us, and we're very fortunate to be able to hear her speak to us today. Yes, her dreams did come true, and in reaching it, she has become famous and well respected. You too can achieve your dreams. Just like you, Roberta Bondar received her elementary and secondary education in Sault Ste. Marie. Her father, Ed Bondar, was an office manager at the Sault Ste. Marie Public Utilities Commission, and her mother, Mildred, taught business studies in high school. In fact, she was a colleague of mine. We taught together at Wadding Collegiate. Just like you, she and her older sister, Barbara, received encouragement from her parents and her teacher to set goals and to be as involved in many activities as possible. Both Roberta and Barbara were involved in Girl Guides, the YMCA, their church group, school clubs, and many sporting activities that they could fit in their busy schedule. As a young girl, Roberta was fascinated with science, and her father Ed built her a laboratory in their basement on McGregor Avenue, where they lived for most of their lives. While in high school, a science project led her to a summer job studying the spruce budworm at the Great Lakes Forestry Center. And just like many of you who will eventually follow the same path, she went on to continue her education in university, enrolling in the science program, receiving a Bachelor of Science in Geology and Agriculture at the University of Guelph, my alma mater. By the way, Roberta, I didn't know this until I was researching. You were there just ahead of me by 1 or 2 years. So I'm sorry I didn't know you then, but obviously I got to know you later. And then she followed with a Master of Science degree in Experimental Pathology from the University of Western Ontario in 1971, a Doctor in Neurobiology from the University of Toronto in 1974, a Doctor of Medicine from McMaster University in 1977, and she was admitted as a Fellow to the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons of Canada in Neurology in 1991. In 1983, Dr. Bondar achieved her dream as she was chosen as a member of the first Canadian astronaut program, and in January 1992, she became the second Canadian and the first Canadian woman astronaut in space with her flight aboard the shuttle Discovery, and the rest is history. As a personal aside, during the Christmas holidays, my family came home to visit, and one of my family members is my son Dan, who now works across the world. And in 1992, when Roberta was on the shuttle, he did a project, and he reminded me when he was here home for Christmas that he had done something that maybe I would share with Dr. Bondar and give it to her today. After this many years, he's 30, I think, right now. I think I have no idea what my kids' names are or what their ages are, but that's a side joke too. But anyway, Roberta's mom, Mildred, during that time, as I said, we were colleagues, taught together. She would come and visit my kids, 3 boys, and she would bring decals, and she would bring stories and newspaper clippings, and really motivated my kids about following the flight and the achievements of Roberta. So anyway, I didn't know this. I didn't know this until a few weeks ago at Christmas time, when my son said, you know, I have something for her that I did when I was in grade 6, and would you mind giving it to her? And he went through the Christmas holiday and had it mounted. And what it was a portrait. I don't know, Dan, if you can get that for the people. A portrait of Roberta and the flight and the flight mission and so on. So he had it mounted. I'm going to give it to you. So just like you in grade 6, and I know that there are other people who are doing science projects and so on. That's as early as it begins. Anyway, as a result, since her flight, Dr. Bondar has headed the international research teams. She has become an acclaimed photographer of the natural wonders of our planet, and she has authored 4 best-selling photo essay books, as well as a children's book on space that she co-authored with her sister Barbara. So as a result, Dr. Bondar has received many honors, including the Order of Canada and the Order of Ontario, the NASA Space Medal. She was inducted, as you saw, in the Canadian Medical Hall of Fame, the International Women's Forum Hall of Fame, and most recently inducted in the Canada's Walk of Fame, which you saw a few minutes ago. And one of my colleagues said that didn't mean much to me, but I'm sure it means a lot to you, that she was able to sit beside Canadian actor Ryan Reynolds and Canadian actress Sandra Yo of Grey's Anatomy. That may mean something to you. I mean, unless it's hockey, it wouldn't mean much to me. Anyway, she has received 24 honorary doctorates from Canadian and American University, and has had schools and other buildings named after her. As you know, we have the Roberta Bondar Place and the Roberta Bondar Pavilion here in Sault Ste. Marie. She has also served 2 terms of Chancellor of Trent University in Peterborough and is an adjunct faculty member in the Environments and Life Science Graduate Program. Yes, dreams do come true for a young person raised and educated in Sault Ste. Marie, and dreams can come true for the rest of you. You can be the next Dr. Roberta Bondar. Please give a warm Sault Ste. Marie welcome to Ste. Marie's very own Dr. Roberta Bondar.
Thank you very much. But that felt good. Standing up is very good. Well, it's great to be here today. I was listening to the story. There's so much I'd like to share with you. And some people have asked me how difficult it is to speak to 7 people, or 70 people, or 700 people, or 7,000 people. To tell you the truth, the hardest thing I ever had to do was throw the opening pitch this season. The Blue Jays won the World Series. Because there were 55,000 people in that place, and I had to throw the ball from the pitcher's mound to the home plate. And afterwards, my coach in softball from Sault Ste. Marie sent me a fax that said, "What a lousy pitch." So you can be humbled no matter what you try to do in life. But I would like to speak to each of you today. This is not speaking to a mass of faces that I don't see and recognize. I see all of you. Maybe they're ones sort of virtually I'm not particularly contacting with in person, but this is really a personal message for all of you. So think about it as if I'm just sitting having maybe a nice cup of hot water with you. We're just sitting talking about some of the issues that you're facing and some of the difficulties you're having, but some of the wonderful things that you're hoping to do for yourself. Because that's what this morning's about. It's about me sharing not just what I've done, but what you might like to do. We have a question period afterwards, and I know that questions were done before I gave this talk. So unfortunately, there's not going to be time for me to take questions after this talk, but I do have a website, I do have a contact thing. So there's something you really want to talk to me about, just send me a note to robertabondar.com, and we'll see if we can send you some information. So it's important for you to understand that I want to talk to each of you. It doesn't matter if you're back there, or if you're virtually joining us, or if you're right in the front row. And certainly J.P. Taylor and Alexandra are going to be interfacing a little bit more with me. But for the rest of you, let's see if I can try to bring you a bit closer to me. Because I think it's important for you to try to understand where I came from. You know, I came from Sault Ste. Marie. I asked someone here where you're from, and I was expecting the high school number, but he said Sault Ste. Marie, and it really sounded great. People identify with this community. I always do. I love it when I go in the airport in Toronto. I don't know if you've ever been there, but there's a long way to go downstairs on the escalator and get the airplane to come to the Sault. And quite often there's a turnaround plane, or there's a plane coming from North Bay or Toronto, from Sudbury or Thunder Bay to Toronto via the Sault. And these people come off the airplane and they're coming up the escalator while I'm going down the escalator, and they recognize me and it's sort of high-fiving all the way down the escalator. Or they come across before I get to the escalator and they're from the Sault, and I'm from the Sault, and so we do the Sault hug all the way. And it's an amazing feeling. When I was Chancellor at Trent, I just loved to shake people's hands and ask them what they were doing, where they were going. I tried not to be too slow because there are thousands of people who have to get their degrees. And I'm shaking their hand and they're saying, "I'm from the Sault." And right away, the big hug. Because it's important that we understand where we're from and the values that we have. I've taken them with me, and I have lots of dreams, and I want to talk a bit about them today. I think it's very important for you to understand that I'm not somebody different from you. I'm not. When my parents were growing up in the Sault, they were born here from parents that had come from other countries. When they were growing up, they had newspapers on their bed. They didn't have any money. I remember when my mother started teaching, and for 7 years she'd go down to Toronto to take summer courses. Didn't have the Algoma University here. But Laurentian came, and Algoma University was an extension of Laurentian, and she was able to take night courses. So for 7 years, she wanted to be this teacher so badly from the time she was your age, and she waited and waited till she had enough money to be able to pay for her tuition. But in her 50s, she became a teacher. And she loved the students. And that dream came true for her. And I remember when she started teaching, we finally had money to buy some new rugs. And I still have one of the rugs. We sold the house in the Sault and brought my mom down to Toronto, which had health problems. And I have that rug. In fact, I have two of them. I have one right in my office. And do you know what else I have in my office? A lot of people don't come into my home. I'm a very private person. Because people could tear me apart and laugh at some of the things I do, and I don't want that. But I'll tell you what I have in my room. I have a set of cupboards that I bought from IKEA in Toronto, handy, good quality, got doors on them, and on these white shelves, I've got things that I had when I was growing up in Sault Ste. Marie. I've got my first camera, my first little Brownie Hawkeye camera. I've got some of the little things that I had that meant so much to me because when I looked at them when I was younger, they were fun, they were exciting. You know, when you get to be older, there's so many things. There's exams, there's this, there's that, there are all kinds of distractions, and sometimes our dreams kind of wobble around, and maybe they disappear and evaporate, and we're a bit lost without dreams. But I look at that cabinet, I look at the stuff, I open the doors sometimes I take them out, and think, you know, I really had energy then. I really had this dream. And I'd shut that cupboard door, and I'd be invigorated again. And I'm re-energized by connecting with my past. There is nothing wrong with that. Do you know that when I was in grade 6 and grade 7 and grade 8, I was putting plastic model rockets together. I'm going to show you some pictures of that. The important thing is that when I got into the astronaut program, I told people, listen, believe me. Because when I was in high school, in grade 9, 10, 11, people started laughing at the fact that this girl was putting these plastic model rockets together, so I threw them out. In my head, I always wanted to be a spaceman. Astronauts didn't exist then. Really, very little had gone off the surface of our planet. I'm that old. But it'll happen to you because you don't want the other thing, which is not happening to you. You want to get older. And I'm thinking, I wish I'd kept those. But that's what mums are for. And on the Christmas of the first year that I became an astronaut, there was this big brown box, much the same as Mario's son and this wonderful port that they did in grade 6. My mother gave me this big brown box with a big bow on it, and I opened it up, and inside were what? My plastic space models. And they are now down at the Bush Plain Heritage Center. They represent my dreams. They represent things that you're doing right now, whether it's a portrait of me or the portrait of somebody else, or maybe doing a drawing of a bird. You like looking at birds. It doesn't mean necessarily you have to go into ornithology and study birds, but it means you have an interest in life beyond your personal narrow space. It means you're engaging with the world at large. Let's start, because I want to talk about that. It's very important. That's what I want to share with you, each of you. I know where the cameras are that are taking me virtually somewhere else, but all of you have that opportunity to trap that energy you have now. Because as we get older, some of that energy kind of dissipates and we kind of lose our way a little bit. But the dreams refocus us. The dreams keep us going. Let me show you. I'm going to keep coming back to my laptop and putting things on. So I do all these keynotes myself because I enjoy doing this graphic stuff. I like putting things up there to try to make people have fun, because this has to be about fun. When you're in a place like this, you got to be energized. You got to think, oh, I learned something today. Some people might be embarrassed by learning something that's not in school, but that's the way we learn. We learn from the world around us. And I'm going to be learning from people today as I speak. So Celebrate 100 was a good time for me to come to the city to be able to celebrate my 20th anniversary. I know the people in the audience here, apart from a few, weren't around in those days. Your parents were, and if they're from the Sault, they were able to celebrate as well. So dreams, what does it take to make them happen? Well, this is one of my favorite slides. This is actually a wood engraving. It was actually in black and white when it originally appeared. But I love this one because it's about us. It's not just about this shepherd looking into the night sky. It's about each of us looking beyond our total world that we know. It's about having the courage to look beyond. It's about having the opportunity to read. It's about having the opportunity to think new things. And when you think about the technology you have around you, just imagine. The technology shouldn't be driving you. You should be asking technology to do things for you. Technology shouldn't be saying you've got to do the text messages every 5 minutes. You got to say to yourself, now how am I going to use this text messaging to make my life better, to make me connect? You got to think about what you're doing. So when this shepherd's looking out into the night sky, he's looking beyond what has been accepted for years and years and years and years. Looking beyond, looking at this absolutely incredible universe and thinking, oh my goodness, what is that stuff? Because if I had been given a crystal ball when I was your age, can you imagine? I was given a crystal ball, and in the crystal ball it said, Roberta Bondar is going to be a doctor, a scientist, a photographer, and an astronaut. I'd be looking, I don't think so. That's a lot of work. How am I ever going to do that? So some days I actually close my eyes. I did this actually the other day. I sat in the family room that I have at my home, and I closed my eyes and I opened it. I do this fairly frequently, and I tried to pretend when I was 16 and thinking, what would I think if I had this flash into the future and could see all these things around me? I don't think I'd believe them. When you get to be in your 20s, 30s, and 40s, just remember, when you were in grade 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, the world was opening up for you. You had energy, you had dreams. Close your eyes and open them again. Would you recognize where you are? Would you be thrilled and happy with what you see and what you have become? Because we are what we become. I am, not just because I've grown up in Sault Ste. Marie, but I've taken the opportunities of the values that I learned in Sault Ste. Marie and went off and did other things as well and tried to bring that energy back. If we leave the community for educational purposes or training or whatever, and we come back to a community and reinvigorating it, we are heroes. We don't have to go on a bomb off the planet for a few days to prove it. We have to give of ourselves back to our community, to other people. Volunteerism. Mr. Turco was talking about, I was in Girl Guides. Because I couldn't be in Boy Scouts, I was in Girl Guides. Did things in the church groups, the YMCA, the Family Y. There were all kinds of ways that I was trying to take a skill set I was learning and trying to apply them to a broader world. Trying this balance back and forth, back and forth. That's what I wish for you. I wish for each of you to understand that what you're doing now will set you up for the rest of your lives. Things that you don't even know about, ideas that you have, interests that you have no idea when they're going to come in handy, but they make you who you will become. They make you a round person, a wonderful person, someone that someone wants to sit beside at dinner. Can you imagine sitting beside someone at dinner who didn't do anything, who didn't go anywhere? If you take away the texting, if you take away the cell phones, the Blackberries, whatever the vehicle is that you use to communicate with each other on a sort of a minute-by-minute basis, can you imagine sitting beside someone who's not texting and who has never done anything? That would be a boring way to spend your time. So don't be that person next to somebody else that's boring. Find something that you really enjoy and learn about it. So let's move on. I just want to show, I don't want you to laugh too much about some of the stuff that I'm putting up here, because some of it I actually use to corporations. I use these things to corporations to talk about dreams, because it doesn't matter how old you are, you have to have a dream. Otherwise, how interesting are you? What kind of energy do you have to share? So when I talk about dreams, I talk about having an interest in something. I talk about things that require support around us and a certain skill set, obviously opportunity, and luck. So when you have a dream, you sort of need all this cascade of things in order to make that dream happen. You have to have an interest in your dream, otherwise you'll never read about it. It's okay to say Roberta Bondar when you were little Bobby Bondar in the Sioux and you wanted to be a spaceman. That's a dream. How do you make dreams come true? Well, you have to have an interest in it. So I was building little plastic model rockets and read little science fiction books. I'd go up to Lake Superior and I'd look at the stars at night. I'm not trying to convert you to being an astronaut, but just saying being aware of the world around you. Because if you have a dream, you got to read about that dream. Like, is that really something I want to do? Or maybe move the dream someplace else, or maybe a different dream? And your support systems. You heard my mother on that video. The guidance counselor at one of the local high schools tried to say Roberta doesn't study hard enough, so don't have her take science, have her take languages. Like, doesn't take study for languages? I mean, really. So my mother and my father were great support systems, and my sister. Like, you need a nucleus of people who are going to be positive to you. There's negative stuff. You know, there could be 100 people in this room, and I'd get an evaluation form. 99 of them would give me an A+, and one would give me a B-. What do you think I'd listen to? The human brain's about that negativity stuff. Don't let it happen to you. Be more than human. Be that A+ listener. Don't listen to that B-. It's 1 in 100. And who is this person anyway? Now, if there were 99 that were giving me a B-, now that's different. I'd probably say A+, well, that person really knew what I was talking about. So think about it all your life. You want positive support people around you. A community that will encourage you, that will help you, facilitate you to learn, facilitate you to get involved in activities, facilitate you to touch the world at large. And you have a great way to do it technologically. So when I talk about skill set, I mean, you got to learn a few things. So maybe building plastic model rockets, not like rocket science, right? It's not like being an engineer. But it did help me with my fine finger coordination. So there were lots of spin-offs from that. So skills are very important. And we learn those at technical school, colleges, courses we take. We learn them on hobbies. Hobbies are great. And the opportunity. Now imagine if Canada had not given a Canadarm, the remote manipulator system, to the Americans, they wouldn't have invited us to have astronauts to participate in their space program. So opportunity is important. Luck is the ability to be in some place where opportunity crosses with that skill set. Well, I've got news for you. You can make luck happen. You can make luck happen. Because if you didn't have that skill set, you would never recognize that opportunity. If you didn't have a broad background in things, you would never recognize an opportunity to come up to help with this dream. And if you have this dream that's there and it's persistent and you really think about it and you have the interest, and you've got to be able to grasp that opportunity. You make luck happen because you are prepared. It's a Girl Guide motto. It says, be prepared. And I used to say it all the time as a little kid, but no, it's really true. If we're prepared, we can seize on opportunities. So that's I've never given this talk before, by the way. This is special for you. Because I love this too. And I will do anything to help you. So let's carry on. This is me growing up. Black and white days, but I'm the one on the left. My sister's on the right. Of course, when I was growing up, I was fascinated with my dad's binoculars. It was a tool. And I loved the lenses, and I could look out at the moon. I had no idea this was in my future. I had no idea that I was going to go into space, but I dreamt about going to space. I dreamt about being up and seeing the planet and going closer to the stars and all kinds of science fiction stuff. And I dreamt about a world beyond where I was. So these are the plastic model rockets, just in case you didn't believe me. And I took this photograph with my first camera. That's why it's black and white. But nonetheless, these are the plastic model rockets that you can see in real life down at the Bushplane Heritage. So when early on I was reading about the opportunity I didn't realize was really only for men at that time. There were these original Mercury astronauts, and I looked at them as an extension of the human race. And it wasn't until the Americans made the opportunity to happen for women in the space shuttle program was there a little bit of light coming down that tunnel for me. At this time I was at university because I realized that early on I wanted to be a scientist. Now, I don't know how many of you have done this exercise or have these yearbooks, but when I was in high school, we had this yearbook, and it would always come out with what's your favorite expression, and people make a joke about things. So, for example, my thing was, I kind of was a bit of a joker in class. And I liked science, but I liked athletics. I was sportswoman of the year, and I was leadership. I just enjoyed athletics. My mom was, dad were very athletic. I enjoyed athletics. I enjoyed being outdoors. How do you bring all of that together? So in the high school yearbook, they had my probable destination, cleaning science labs at Sir James Dunn. That was going to be my athletic science crossover, right? And then one year, people thought that I was getting a little bit, I'd be laughing in class and making jokes, and everything was fun for me. And so it had probable destination replacing, there was a famous comedian named Jackie Gleason, so I had probable destination replacing this guy on television. And so when I look at things in the past, I think, gosh, I still had some of those things then I have now. Hopefully I will have them the rest of my life. But they were recognized when I was in school in the Sault. So being at the head of the list was not being an astronaut, because I didn't understand what that needed. And I found that on the way, if it hadn't been for that support group I was talking about, there were a lot of distractions that occurred. Talked about exams, peer pressure. There were blocks, because I felt that being a block about some of this stuff was that I had no idea how to get into a space program. I just had no idea what were the obstacles for me. And so I'm going to share with you what I consider these three things. To get rid of the obstacles, you can focus on what it is you want to do. You can be very creative, and that just drives away any block, and be committed to it. So as you go through, you don't need that right now, but as long as you have the interest and read around it, as you keep going through life, you start using these three mechanisms. And the way that we use these three mechanisms is to engage ourselves. Volunteerism, schools, but to embrace this life that we've got, because I don't know if anyone's told you this, but as far as I know, nothing in space has led me to think of any other way of looking at it. This is our crack at life. This is us. This is a moment we're sharing together that I will never repeat in my life. I will never have this day at this age for me ever again. I will have shared this moment of my life with all of you, wherever you are. And so when we think of that, we think every day is important. Every day is a day that we should be engaging to learn for ourselves, so that we can be better people. It is very important for those of us who get older to try to encourage you when you're younger, because we see energy in all of you that as we get older we don't quite have in the same amounts. So we just like to be able to take our wisdom that we've learned going through life and help you. So one of the big words for me is engaging the world around you. Mr. Turco mentioned about this high school project, and in fact I'm going to go down and see the folks at the Great Lakes Forest Research Center tomorrow, because when the federal government had an insect research lab, it was on the foot of Church Street on Queen, and I'd be there every summer. Now, it was a job I didn't want first, because I was teaching canoeing and making $1 a day. I thought this was big bucks, $1 a day. And I hear everyone sneering. It is true, it is not much money. It wasn't much money then. And in high school, I joined the science club. I became vice president, and I decided as a role model, because my mother was always being a role model, I thought as a role model, I will do the science fair project and show everybody that, it's fun to do a science fair project. So I did it I first of all wanted to, I don't know how many of you really like science fiction, but I wanted to develop a strain of flies resistant to DDT, which was an old insecticide. Imagine wanting to develop a strain of flies resistant to DDT. So my parents looked at me and they said, you better go down to the local insect laboratory, maybe speak to one of the scientists. And I thought in those days scientists had white coats, they were like this, and they lived in the basement, and they had brains in jars, and they weren't to be trusted. You don't go in, you go in there, you'll never come out alive. So I went down to the local insect laboratory, and this very nice Dr. Sapel took me through, and he said, okay, well, when's your how long do you have to get this strain of flies? And I said, 3 weeks. Just like any student. Oh yeah, 3 weeks. I worked deadline to deadline, 3 weeks. He said, maybe not enough, but there's going to be this outbreak of forest head caterpillars in the city, and kind of nice for us. And so they helped me along with this project, but I did not like caterpillars. It was never a dream of mine to pick up a caterpillar. Never a wish. Never did I want to pick up something like that squishy thingy. Ugh. And so I did this project, and I actually had to learn to take caterpillars, and I won't go through all the details, but it's fascinating how we actually preserve them so you can look at them, identify them. It was really kind of fun. And then he said to me on the way out of there, he said, "You should apply for a job at the forest lab." And I said, "Well, I got a job. $1 a day teaching canoeing." And he said, "Well," he said, "apply for a job because you might like this." And I thought, "Oh, okay." Anyway, it paid a lot more money, and I worked there for 6 summers. I lived at home, and I worked there, and I learned about science. I engaged in science. I didn't know. I was reading about it in school. I didn't know what scientists really did. And it was kind of neat to learn. And they weren't strange, funny people. They were kind of like people who were Boy Scout leaders, and they were like ordinary people. And so I kind of liked some of the discipline that the science involved, and I really kind of then became very conflicted between being a phys ed teacher and being a science teacher. And a lot of things happened that obstacles happened to me. I got mumps, I got my paralyzed arm, and of course they canceled the MAC I was going to take in phys ed, blah, blah. A lot of stuff happened. There were obstacles. But I had this dream. And I kept developing a skill set that would cross with opportunity if it ever happened. That's what the dream's about. Developing and being right there at the right place, making luck happen, making that dream be a reality. Of course, I had these 4 things. Just in case one of them didn't work out, I had multiple dreams. I had a dream about being a doctor. I had a dream about being a scientist. I had a dream about being a photographer and going and seeing the world. And I had a dream about being an astronaut. So far, so good. I became this person in the... Orange is not my color. But hey, I can make exceptions. And put a little bubble on my head. I want to show you this picture because before I became a spaceman, before I became an astronaut, in the Sault, I was learning to fly. So in the summers, when I was at the Forest Insect Laboratory, and contrary to popular opinion, I did not get my pilot's license before I drove a car. I don't know how they expected me to get to the airport. They obviously don't know the Sault very well. So I was learning how to fly a plane. So this is after I soloed, after I had my license. I'm wandering around doing a little flight check, and I thought, hey, this is so good. You know, so you get so far in a dream, you think, oh, I'm pretty close. And then, of course, you end up doing something like this, and then the little Cessna goes in the past, and you think, oh, I build on that skill set, now I can fly a jet. Oh, this is so exciting, getting closer and closer to that dream. And then one day, I went up, and I had my little camera with me, and I know you all have phones now, pretty much everybody in this room either has a phone or access to a phone or a small camera, and you take pictures all the time of each other. You capture your history, which is great. My dad has 40 years of movies. Otherwise, that Walk of Fame people, would be a very short video. But lots of movies my dad took. And I took this picture of me going through the speed of sound the first time. I dare say there are very few people in this room who have gone through the speed of sound, including teachers. I took this shot going through speed of sound for the first time. A little thing I took up and go point and shoot, took a shot of me in my helmet. Of course, that's a baby picture now, too. It's like the Cessna. I've moved beyond. Do you know how fast the space shuttle goes? 25 times the speed of sound. And I know that I've gone faster than anyone in this room. I just know that. Otherwise, I wouldn't be up here talking to you. Someone else would be. So the skill set, the opportunity, very important. Develop more skill sets, learning about team building, aerobatic flying. You got to be a team, otherwise you run into each other. And then there are a few other things that I learned about in the space program because I had to engage engineering, and I'm not an engineer. I learned a lot about engineering, and so I think like an engineer now when it comes to cabling, when it comes to doing things and making sure something works. My dad always said to me, if it doesn't work, there's a reason. I kept thinking there was something out there that made things not work, and there was you couldn't problem solve. Now I know if something doesn't work, you start with a plug in the wall. Right, and then you see there's a light bulb in the lamp, or the light current. There's a sequence that you start learning about critical thinking. We learn that from grade 6 onwards. We learn to think in this nice, methodical way. And that comes in handy. When you're creative, you can be free thinking all over the place, but you still have to have these building blocks. So it was very helpful for me in my new life. Now, what I want to do is I've got, in case you missed it, they had a bit of the launch of my shuttle on the Walk of Fame. We personalize our flight, so my shuttle, Discovery. But I want to show you the shuttle launch of the last shuttle to go up, Atlantis, in case you missed it. Because there's a very important word that the gentleman uses to describe this launch sequence. Now, it only takes 8.5 minutes to get into space, but we don't have 8.5 minutes here, so I've kind of contracted the whole thing down to less than 2 minutes. So if you just bear with me, are you all ready for this? Okay, this is Atlantis. Now listen for the one word that the announcer uses when the thing is going to lift off. So we get rid of Discovery. Here's Atlantis on the launch pad, and here we go.
Go for main engine start. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. All 3 engines up and burning. 2, 1, 0, and liftoff. The final liftoff of Atlantis on the shoulders of the space shuttle. America will continue the dream.
Roger, roll, Atlantis. Houston now controlling the flight of Atlantis. The space shuttle spreads its wings one final time for the start of a sentimental journey into history. Booster officer confirms staging a good solid rocket booster separation. Its main engine cut off. For the last time, the space shuttle's main engines have fallen silent as the shuttle slips into the final chapter of a storied 30-year adventure. Now standing by for external tank separation. Atlantis off the tank. Commander Chris Ferguson will be maneuvering Atlantis now into an orientation to enable...
So the word, the last flight of the space shuttle program, what was the most important word? Dream. To continue the dream. Because you see, at the end of something is not the end of the dream. The dream can grow, the dream can change, but the point is that you have an idea. You have a dream of doing something that's bigger than what you are right now. And so the space program has this dream. The space program has a dream to carry on and do other great things. It's just that we don't use that vehicle anymore. We'll use something else. The engineers will build something else. We'll be creative. We'll engage the engineers. We'll engage all kinds of people with new ideas. So the dream is important. And when I was in space, it was very confusing because if all of us suddenly became weightless, floating around in our seats, it would be fun a little bit, because you'd be bumping into each other and you'd be trying to find the walls, and if someone yelled fire, you'd start panicking because nobody would be able to find the exit door. Here, you know it's there. You know you can go out there, there, and the back. But if you're floating all around like this, how do you know where that exit door is? Yeah, pretty hard to find. So trying to get used to a new environment is very difficult. Moving from elementary school to secondary school is hard. Moving from secondary school to post-secondary education, or if you have to do an interim job before you might want to go on to study more, it's all very disorienting. Going down to the insect laboratory like I did to work the first day when I was used to canoeing was really hard. I was not used to being inside all day long. So there were some things that I had to understand and try to create a different space for me and still have the dream. So dream's very important. So when I'm in space, I'm thinking about other things too. The dream for me was not just about getting into space, which was great when I was in grade 6 to be able to say I could get into space. But then what are you going to do? I'm not a space tourist. I didn't spend $13 million to go into space just to look out the window and wear a big nose and play around a little bit. I went up there because you paid for my space flight. At least your parents did. Tax dollars paid for me to go up there. And I'm not going to go up there just waving my hands as I fly over Sault Ste. Marie, am I? I'm going to do something to make you all proud. I'm going to do some science. Luckily, we can all spell the word. Some adults don't know how to spell it. But anyway, science is really important. But even more important is how we change in space flight. And this, I wish I could have you back. Maybe another time I'll have you all back. Because there's so many things happen to our body when we're in space. Amazing thing that teaches us what we thought what we knew about ourselves and our bodies. Whoa, we come back from space, you can't do this. Nobody can. No one coming back from space can put one foot in front of the other. Wide base gait, that's what we call this. Wide base, and the gait is when you walk. That's what people, when they come back from space, they walk like that all the time. because they try to this, go over. You can take a 250-pound man after spaceflight, like that, down they're gone. It is amazing what we don't know about ourselves, that space teaches us. And so one of my interests, of course, as a neurologist, was how the nervous system, how our reflexes change, how that down here on Earth, why when you trip over something, your arms go out, and you break your pulse, you don't break your nose, why that disappears when we come back from spaceflight. Trip over something, down like this with your arms out. So those reflexes change. What does it tell us about the nervous system? What does it tell us about the ability of the brain to recover from diseases and injuries? So that's just one tiny little thing. So the dream for me was not just then about being an astronaut, which I thought I'd get that dream, I'll get that dream, I'll get that dream. It was also, what am I going to do? I love medicine. I love medicine because it's the key. It really diminishes the fear factor. Right? Science does that for us too. It answers questions for us. But medicine, helping other people, resuscitating people, making people's lives better, whether you're in nursing or some other aspect of the healthcare delivery team, medicine for me meant a lot. Sure, it meant about research and learning new things, but how can we apply that when we come back? So that's was part of my dream. So I was doing space experiments that dealt with how blood flow in the brain changes, etc. But one of the really interesting things is when we're all floating around in here, as I mentioned a couple minutes ago, floating and bumping into each other, we kind of, like, it's weird. It's such a strange thing to see someone upside down and recognize. Have you ever stood at somebody and they're lying on a bed, and you stood at the end of the bed, like your brother standing there, and you look at them upside down, like where their mouth's supposed to be, it's the forehead? Have you ever done that? It is the weirdest looking thing. Because you're not used to, in your brain, the spatial representation of the body is so strange. So up in space, we tend to take pictures like this because people recognize us, right? See, but actually, this is how we work. And it's hard instantly to recognize which one's me. It's hard instantly to recognize which one's my German colleague, for example. You kind of have to look around because you've lost some of the reference points. So part of engaging life is that you want to have as many reference points as possible. You want to learn as much as you can now because it may save your life. It may help you to orient to something strange and abnormal that might happen in your world around you. So those are just some of the little nuggets, little thoughts from my space logs. This is at the beginning. So when I looked out the window, I wanted to engage the world. It is the biggest thing a human being has ever seen. Did you know that? Did you ever think about that? The world's huge. And imagine me floating around it, looking out and seeing this huge thing. We don't see it as a ball, and I didn't go to the moon. We just went around the Earth. Haven't been to the moon since the 70s. So we see it like 1,200 kilometers out the window, this curve. So looking out that window, I wanted to engage. Before my space flight, I wanted to have that skill set. And I'd go down, I'd look at Earth observation photographs. I'd try to recognize countries when they're upside down, when they're oblique from me. I tried to recognize these things to prepare me for this space flight, to make sure that I was engaged. So looking at this from space the first time is, first of all, you get this welling up in your stomach because you've never seen the world at all, and you certainly have never seen it hanging upside down, and where am I? This happens to be, let's flip it around for you. If you're used to looking at an atlas and following some of the political news lately, this is looking over Africa. You can see the Nile with a nice expanse of green because we've blocked the Aswan Dam and created a more fertile Nile, but that's another environmental story. And you can see the Mediterranean, and you can see the difference. It looks like a flat sheet from space. The mountains, the Rockies look like pieces of whipped cream. Everything looks like flat Earth on a ball. It is quite amazing. So then if I look at clouds from space, it's a new way of looking at something that I thought I knew about. On the ground in the summertime, I quite often, not so much in the winter, but I quite often look up at the sky, and I remember in the Sault, lying out in the backyard, looking at these clouds and thinking about what is up there, and seeing all these different shapes of clouds. So then I decided when I became a pilot, one of the things that's really important is to recognize clouds before you go into them, especially if you don't have an instrument rating. So looking at these clouds, I started to decide to engage in meteorology, learn about what was making these clouds. And so from space, to be able to look at these clouds and be able to describe them is very important for scientists because they don't often get to be on top of the clouds. And when we're making weather satellites to give us some information about clouds and cloud cover to predict the weather, we really need to have, first of all, human visualization of what these clouds really do look like before we can design a piece of equipment that can measure them properly. So again, engaging and trying to understand and learning. And of course, where are we here? If you don't recognize this, we are in trouble, ladies and gentlemen. This is an amazing place. Do you know, when we're looking at stuff from space, there are very few immediate recognition spots. This is one of the biggies. First of all, we don't fly over the geographic center of Canada, which is north of Baker Lake in Nunavut. Look it up if you're not familiar with it. And the space station itself doesn't fly, but we don't fly over Canada's Arctic. I mean, I was going like, well, look at the Arctic, and looking out the window, and very high. You can see 1,200 kilometers, but we don't fly directly over it to take a nice photograph straight down. We have to take these shots just like out there with a big telephoto lens. And so being able to recognize and be able to look at a hometown, when people go up who are pilots, they come back with so many pictures of airplanes, places, terminals, air terminals, and all kinds of runways and things. When the Navy people go up there, they take all kinds of places on the coast of these naval yards and places where they study. I took a picture of this, and everybody knew where it was. I didn't have to take a telephoto shot to tell people what this was. This was Sault Ste. Marie. I tell people it's I know it's not quite true, but I tell them the confluence of the Great Lakes. Now, I'm going to give you one geography lesson here and a bit of science, just one. And it's important because you can use this forever in your life. It will never change. People are asked, how many Great Lakes are there? And people say 5. Well, geologically, scientifically, wrongy. There are 4. Because Lakes Huron and Lakes Michigan are the same lake. Scientifically, if we look at the water flow pattern and the definition of a lake, it is the same lake. It is a stunning thing to think about concepts that we've had all our lives that are really not correct because we put names on things. We constrain ourselves. Once you put a name on it, we don't expand to say, well, how are the fish moving around? How does it affect pollution? How are the water? All kinds of environment questions. Like if we maintained in our head we have all these separate lakes like this and didn't think of a whole ecosystem, we'd be in trouble. So by engaging science, it helps us learn things. And from space flight, you look at this thing and say, hey, I know something you don't know. So it's kind of cool to be from the Sioux in space, because at one point in our space flight, not only did we have to take this kind of shot, we also had to take a shot over the Belcher Islands with the IMAX camera. The Belcher Islands, I want you to look it up on a map. Belcher Islands, a classic thing that you can see on maps is this swirl. You look up James Bay, Hudson Bay, you look up there and you'll find Belcher Islands. They did not know where it was, they couldn't find it. It was winter, and they had been trained to look at summer photographs. So I'm up there, I'm from the Sioux, I know what snow looks like. So I was up at the window helping them with the IMAX camera to take some of these pictures. Just being from the Sioux it made me so good. I got somebody's chocolate donut that day. You know, it's the idea that I had a skill set and the opportunity to use it. So when we're thinking about dreams, the dreams of most people here on the ground in the older days was, going to the moon, going to the moon. What happened when we got to the moon? The dream became this. It wasn't just doing the dream and getting there. It was, wow, we can reverse that because we've never seen something we knew. We've never seen it like this. And how curious is that planet? And this is the kind of thing that drove me to the next phase. And I'm just going to wrap this up. I just want to show you that the world, all these planets are not like this. They're not so close together. But it's the idea that there's lots of worlds out there for us to explore and discover. But when we look at them so far, the one that's really important is this one. Now, when you look at this montage of images that are going through, this is not Mars. It looks like a planet. You can see all these erosion features, whether it's wind, water would be an erosion, a force that we have here on Earth. But when we look at these things, it could be another planet until we see this, until we actually see water. And then we know all of those images are of Earth, because Earth is a planet. It is a big planet. And the Sioux is an integral part of that planet. The Great Lakes are huge to the planet. They affect weather in more than just the area to the east of us. They affect weather the whole province. They actually affect how water goes back up into the atmosphere. A very complex ecosystem. but we're very well positioned. If you look at this lake, it's a place called Lake Eyre in Australia. This is when it's really, really dry, but just add a bit of water and look what happens. So looking at space, we look down at things, we're able to change our ideas about what the environment really is and what its potential is. So we learn so much every day by engaging science and engaging creativity, new ways of looking at things. If we look at the world's population that uses energy in the form of light, we can see where it's distributed across the world. If we do all these collection of satellite images, we can look at that. And then we can look at how the world changes when it comes to different seasons. And this is now a collection, I'll just run it through. This is how you can look at the world with satellite imagery, looking at how it warms up as it's supposed to, season after season, month after month. You can see how the green comes and the white kind of disappears at the top. And then, of course, it comes back again as the world tips, as the whole world tips again with its angle towards the sun. So we heat up the south, cool down the north, and vice versa. But when we look at that, we start thinking about, what about global warming? Well, global warming, we don't know about the interaction of natural factors. And here is the ash from a volcano eruption in the Philippines going around the world. Now, this blocks a lot of light. It changed a lot of things. It actually dropped the temperature on the planet. So when we start thinking about broader concepts and start asking more and more questions, we realize that this is a very complex planet we live on. We don't know about the value of looking at things that are naturally occurring, or the value of looking at things that have human impact. But we do know locally, if you change your water and change the air, we're going to be in trouble. So we try to do as much as we can because we are the small life form we are. People have looked at me now and said, okay, been there, done that. She's been this. Okay, you put her on a shelf now, put her down in a museum, give her a nice flight jacket, give her the crest, and the flag is there in the history book. What else does she need? Well, that's only part of my needs. When I'm looking at my life, I'm not at the sunset. Did you know that this is a sunrise? Most people think this was a sunset. So when people look at me and they say, what are you doing with your life? I'm saying, hey man, when I was in space, I'd be taking a picture of a sunrise or a sunset every 45 minutes because, of course, we get a sunrise or get the sunrise as it set. It takes 90 minutes to go around the Earth, so half of it's going to be during the dark or half it's going to be during the light. So it's sunrise or sunset every 45 minutes. Where am I in this? I think like my mother did. The glass is always half full. It is always a sunrise. It is not a sunset on my life. So what I've done with my talents and skills from the Sioux by going into space and doing all that historic stuff is just one part. Because I am, at my age, allowed to have a dream. I am, at my age, allowed to be interested in stuff. I am, at my age, still wanting a support system, still wanting to develop skills. At my age, I want opportunity to happen, and I want luck to be there, and I'm going to make it happen. I am going to be, until my last breath, going to be interested in something. I am going to have a dream. If I know when I'm going to die, and I may not because I may be falling out of a helicopter trying to take pictures, but if I am allowed to know, I will know that I've been able to achieve some dreams, and I will have been lucky. But I've made that luck happen, so if you want a dream to happen, you make it happen. You develop that skill set. You look for that opportunity. You keep that interest. You have it with the passion that's inside of you. And if your peers try to push it down, don't throw out the plastic space model equivalent. Or at least have a support system around you that's going to say, I know she's just going through a phase, and protect you from yourself. That's what we need. We need each other. And so with that, my end point is that my dreams now are because of my space flight. I've always enjoyed the environment. My first degree is in zoology and agriculture. I've always liked being outside. And I wanted to dream big. I wanted to say, how can I take that space experience and bring it around and share it with people? Well, I took my cameras, first of all. I mortgaged my house, went out for 3 years, photographed our country, our beautiful country, with these large format cameras. That's just north of here in Puckasaw National Park. And I've been to Africa. And I've photographed these cheetahs in Africa in the context of their environment. And we had these images down at the Art Gallery of Algoma recently. And in conjunction with that, I decided that having a foundation was the way to go. So I co-founded this foundation, the Roberta Bondar Foundation, that deals with looking at a picture, taking a very nice photograph and asking questions inside the photograph. Most people have forgotten if they ever knew why the sky is blue. I challenge everyone in this room to know why the sky is blue and remember it the rest of your life, because you'll be the only one at a dinner party who does. You'll be really good. So part of the foundation, I'm going to show you what we did last fall, and maybe there are some of the students who participated in that will be somewhere listening to this. I threw out a challenge to the schools. I said, okay, high school students, secondary school students, can you take a camera, take an artistic photograph, and send me back an artist statement of 250 words or less, talking about why you took the picture, why it's interesting to you, and maybe something that's in the picture you didn't know about or you wanted to learn about the science, so fusing art and science, so it's not like two different worlds. And so what happened? Well, we got some winners, we got some honorable mentions, and these were photographs taken by students in the city of Sault Ste. Marie. And they're going around the world with us now. Around the world with us. And they are pictures taken in the Sault area. And we challenged everybody in months that may have not been the best months to take pictures, but I think the fall is pretty nice. And they found it very interesting things to photograph and interesting things to write about. And so these photographs have been at the Art Gallery of Algoma. They're going to go internationally. We're going over to China. We're going back to Africa. And the Sault will be represented more than just what I have done in space, but what I have done with that dream to have another dream. So at this point, I want to stop and answer some questions because I know there will be some in the box. You may have more now, and again, if you've got my website. And I also want at this time to express my appreciation to the community of Sault Ste. Marie. Quite often we don't know what the City Council does and Mayor. Last night I happened to watch part of the City Council meeting because it really helped me understand some of the issues that the city faces. There are things that face like bus routes and maybe a new bus terminal someday, and what's going on with people who want to build things in different places, and how we try to support each other and how we try to represent each other. So it's a wonderful thing to learn about my own community where I'm from. So I congratulate the city of Sault Ste. Marie on its 100th anniversary. I'm very proud to be here. I am not 100 years of age, although you might think so. I am not. I was born in 1945 and I'm very proud of it. Just at the edge of 1945, mind you. I was almost into 46. But it gave me a good number because I'm very good at subtracting fives. If it had been 1946, it'd be in more trouble. So I can subtract fives easily, so it's a good year to be born. So thank you very much. I'm glad that you all are still here. I think you're all still here. I can see some of you around. And at this point, I'd like to open it to JP, Taylor, and Alexander to maybe ask me some questions.
I'll see if I can set this up for you.
Thank
you very, very much.
Thank you. Woo!
All right.
Stretch time.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I said we would not be disappointed. Thank you for inspiring us, whether you're 12 years old, 16 years old, 24 years old, or 64 years old. You've inspired us, and thank you very, very much. Next part of this program is we've asked schools to submit a question. If you had a chance to ask Dr. Roberta Bondar a question, what would that be? And schools from all three school boards submitted questions, and we're asking on 3 students that I introduced earlier to come and ask a question from their board, and we'll start in no particular order. We'll ask JP Stefanitza from St. Basil Secondary School to pick a question from his schools in his board. JP?
This question came from a grade 10 science class from St. Basil Secondary School. And they were just wondering, what is your favorite place in the world that you could always want to go visit?
Give me an S. Give me an A. No. Well, you know, for other people that I speak to, I always say that if they went to the Sault, and some people come up here and visit, and they just can't believe it. They can't believe the forest and the water. Am I still on? the beautiful shore of Lake Superior. People can't believe that this is a real place. And some people feel they have to go to some exotic place. But when you do that, when you come home back to the Sioux, you realize how fortunate we are, because if you start looking at things that we need for survival, the most important things are water, fresh air, and we need something that's going to convert something into some food form that we can eat, because we're not very good at it. And we look at the area around the Sioux, and we are very blessed. So I think that if I had to pick a place to encourage people to come, and I honestly do believe in my heart of hearts that this, when I look at the rest of the planet, it's interesting to visit places in Africa because they have different things. But people from Africa want to come here. So wherever we are, we want to go to someplace else we're not used to, because it's different. When I look at the world around me, I think of the national park system, and I think of Canada, and I think of how inaccessible most of our parks are. And I think, well, gosh, I would encourage people to go up to Kluane, because we have Canada's highest mountain, which is the second highest in North America, and the biggest girth mountain in the whole world. What, can you get in to see Mount Logan? Not easily. So that's why people ask me places to visit. Anywhere that you're not in currently, you should go out and look at, because then they'll appreciate being from the Sioux. And that's why we come back here. That's why people who leave the Sioux say, I'm from the Sioux. They don't just say it because they want a hug. They say it because they know that they have come from a very privileged environment.
Thank you.
Thank you, JP. Let's call on Taylor Gerling, from President of Student Council of White Pines, to ask a question on behalf of the Omaha School Board.
Go, Taylor.
This is a question from Sioux College Connection Program from Chris in grade 12. He asked, what goals do you set for yourself when you were a teenager to get where you are today?
We spoke about some of the goals, but I think the goals for me were basically to do something where I was having fun, do something where I was experiencing and learning something different. It wouldn't have mattered to me if the goal was French, because if people, I'll just let you know, my best subjects in high school were English and French. People think it was some form of science, some form of math. And maybe I could have done better, but you know something? I had really great teachers in English and French as well. And my French teacher, who had a fall yesterday and was not able to be here today, but she is still a huge role model and helps me set goals. The other person I'm going to take the time right now, because it is a part of the goal thing, is to stay on the right side of the snow, or the right side of the grass, we say in the summer. And I have someone here who has been a family friend for many, many years. George Constable is his front row. And he plays golf. And he is the oldest surviving member at the golf club. This man said to me many years ago, you should play golf. I didn't listen to him, but I've had so many injuries, I thought, well, I got to change my sport. So my goal now is to try to play golf like George. I probably won't be able to in my lifetime, because I don't have that many years left that George has played golf. But George has taught me a lot about golf, because it's not just about hitting the ball, it's about how you hit the ball, so neurophysiology, I mean, all this kind of stuff. So the goals that I set are things that help me with self-improvement, but also help me to share that knowledge with someone else. And so one of my goals in golf is that I should be so lucky as to share my experience in that athletic endeavor and scientific endeavor with someone else someday, to be able to share with them the way George has been able to share it with me. That would be one of my goals.
Thank you.
Let's call on Alexander Finley from Notre Dame de Green Lac.
Lindsay Patterson from grade 10 at Notre Dame de Grand Lac. Her question is, how does weightlessness affect human optic capabilities?
It is very true that the body changes in spaceflight quite remarkably, and most of us who fly in space who've worn glasses don't need glasses. It's a very strange thing. We're not quite sure of the total reason for it, because this way we don't know exactly how the body works. But in spaceflight, fluids float, and your eyeball has a lot of fluid in it. So it probably changes its shape a little bit. And also, the thing that really gives you the most change in the way a light ray comes into the eye is the first thing it strikes, which is the tear film on the eye. And it probably sits on the eye differently. So, for example, I was a mild, what they call a myope, like I was mildly nearsighted, and I had this astigmatism. So I'd look at the spokes of a bicycle wheel and only see in focus spokes that were in a certain direction. Or a plaid shirt always looked striped for me. Then I'd turn my head, it would be striped the other way. So that's astigmatism. So that's something that we correct with glasses. But in space flight, I did not need my glasses. And I looked at stuff and I'd be squinting and it wouldn't make any difference. So I just took my glasses off. So when I came back from space, I had my eyes lasered because that was so cool in space. I thought, oh, I gotta keep this. When we come back from space, that changes. And the same for reading. So we're not quite sure of why the configuration change of the globe of the eye allows us to see differently. But it certainly does change our way we look at the world. Thank you.
Okay, I think we got a JP. Want to come back up?
You know, when I met JP, he was sitting down. I said, I'm going to wait till you stand up because I saw his legs. I thought, how tall are you? So you can see the microphone. I like when you lift it up. That's great.
This question came from Talia Sokoli from St. Patrick Catholic School. And she was wondering if you could tell us what inspired you to start taking pictures, and what is your favorite thing to photograph?
My start in pictures, I didn't get into this too much. My uncle, who's actually a retired pharmacist who still lives in the Sault, he had a drugstore where he liked cameras so much, he would bring these Nikons in. He ended up being the distributor for Nikons and Leica cameras. If you're not familiar with cameras, they're kind of like higher-end cameras. And in those days, I always thought you could buy them in a drugstore because my uncle had them. But my dad was interested in photography too, and he had movies, color movies of his own wedding in the 1940s, which is like unheard of. And so he was really interested in these cameras and lenses. And I got that because it was fun to be out with them. And I associated fun with cameras. Cameras, fun. Being with my dad, being with my uncle, fun, fun, fun. Whoa, this is cool. And I'm learning how to use it. And people are really impressed because they don't have cameras. And we got to borrow these cameras. It was so nice. So that's how I got my interest in them. And what do I like photographing most? Well, to tell you the truth, when there's something going on at my house, I rely on other people to take pictures. Because although we're all fascinated with taking pictures of each other, and it's great my dad had all these movies. I mean, what a great father he was, getting all these movies. And there's unfortunately no audio because there was no audio in those days. I like taking pictures of the world around me that I could share, especially places that someone else may not be able to go in their lifetime, but to allow them to walk into that environment, to allow them to see the connection between a life form and the world at large. So that's why, and it's very challenging to photograph outside. The studio has different challenges with it. With the lighting, I have a studio set up in the lower level of my home, but I like going out in the field because I like being out in the environment. So the answer to that question is anything in the environment that I can safely take, and I really like taking photographs from a helicopter.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
This is questions from Justin from HM Robbins. He asks, Dr. Bondar, you're a very respected scientist and astronaut. In preparing into going to space, you must have had some fears about this. What fears did you have, and how did you overcome these fears?
The fears going up into an experimental vehicle the way the shuttle was not something I really spent a lot of time thinking about till the first accident with the space shuttle, the Challenger accident that exploded on liftoff. And I was in the astronaut program at that time, and it was a very sobering moment for all of us because the space program had been presented to the public with a big IMAX movie called The Dream is Alive, and it was about, oh, we're going to do commercial things. Ronald Reagan had called it it's now operational. Well, it was the same vehicle that was like experimental the day before, it's the same one the next day. What part of I don't want to go on this, do I not think about? So the shuttle itself was very experimental. So the fear had always been that something might go wrong, but probably not. And they kept saying, oh, the possibility is like 1%. And then it was 4%. And then they kept saying, well, you get more chance of being killed on Highway 401 that goes through Toronto at rush hour. And some of these statistics mean nothing because you're not part of it. It's only sort of an idea and a direction that some of the data show us. I look at the space flight now, and I think, you know, when I first started feeling a little chink was in the Challenger. The second time I felt it was when they took us, when we were selected for the flight, a year before we flew, around where our orbiter was being prepared. And this guy, he was an American astronaut, and they go down and they spent some time at the Cape, and they were called Cape Crusaders. And so they go down, and they would be the interface between us and the engineers. So they took us, my crew, and they walked us all around the orbiter, and he showed us all the parts that had no backup, that could fail. That was really good. They took us around, and they said, well, you see this little hinge flap there? Well, you know, there's all these hinge pins. There's no backup. If one of those hinge goes, that thing goes in the oil, and you're gone, explodes. And I'm looking at it, I said, okay. And the realization of this, for me, my dad died very suddenly about 2 or 3 months before the Challenger accident. And it took quite a toll on my mother. Neither my sister nor I was married at that point. And I'm looking at it and thinking, I am now doing something that I'm dragging people into my slipstream of enjoyment. My slipstream where I can recognize risk and I accept it because I've rationalized all of this with respect to what it is I really want to do. But my family hadn't. They're over here. They're over here with their fears. And I hadn't really talked to them that much. I'd said, well, Mom, well, dear, you've always wanted to go into space, and Dad would have been very proud. I'm very proud of you. And then the Challenger accident happens. Like, you know, we got to talk about this, Mom. And I talked to my mom and my sister. I said, oh, it's okay. So when did I really feel it? 5 hours before I launched in space. I am in my room. I'm supposed to be sleeping, and I've got this little tape recorder. Because they've said, leave your will. Leave your will. Your passport. I don't know why we had to leave our passport, but I guess they thought we were going to be, the shuttle would land somewhere and people wouldn't know where we were from if we didn't have our passport. You know, I mean, I'm the only Canadian on board and thinking I'm the only one who's going to be safe. The rest of you are Americans and one German. Anyway, they took the passports, and they wanted anything else personal we wanted to leave for our families. I'm going to do this tape, I thought, to my mom. And it was during the taping of that little thing I did for my mother that no one has ever heard but me, and I still have it. I cried about every 30 seconds. I had to shut the thing off, and I'd be, you know, because I'm thinking about leaving my mother, like Krista McCullough's mother was in the audience when the cameras are right on her and the shuttle is exploding. And I'm doing this, and it was at that point that I really realized that I was putting them in emotional danger and emotional risk. Why? And it really made me understand the strength of my support system and my mother and my family, that they were willing to take that risk in order to support me, even though they would be the ones that would suffer, not me. Once you're dead, you're not suffering. These other people who are left behind will. So that is the challenge for anyone who takes on a risky activity. And that's the fear that one really should have, is how you're affecting other people by your career choice or your sport choice.
That was 1992, and today, 2012, is 20 years ago. So you're celebrating the 20th anniversary of Flight Discovery. Unbelievable. Just as a side story, my family didn't do a lot of traveling, and I went to your mom because my wife's from England. She wanted to go visit her relatives, and we had never done an overseas travel. So I went to ask her advice about traveling. Your mom advice about traveling and what I should do and prepare. And here I am talking to the mother of a person who's traveled around the universe, and I'm just going over to England. And the thing I remember about her, because she knew we were hesitant about it, the little kids and so on. When we got to the Constellation Hotel, and there's a lot of people here wouldn't know the Constellation Hotel on the airport strip. We got into our room and we were a little bit hesitant. I mean, we're just going over to England. You were going to the universe. We're going to England. In our room were chocolates, flowers, tic-tac-toe games for our kids. That's your mom.
Thank you, Mario.
Last question. Alexander.
Aaron Mohammadi, a grade 10 student at Notre-Dame-des-Grands Lacs, asks, are there long-term effects to the human body from a brief journey into space?
There are long-term effects. We have a category that we're really not very good at right now. One is radiation, the buildup of radiation we have in space. And we need people to live a long time to be able to see chromosomal breaks, for example, that happen with radiation. The other area is one that probably would come to front of mind if you thought about it, and that is bone loss. In fact, I gave a talk once that the title was, I was trying to get these interesting titles. The title was, When We Get to Mars, Will Our Legs Be Flippers? And it was about bone. And astronauts coming back from space actually can have continued bone loss. It doesn't just stop when we land, it continues. And some people have never been able to replace that bone loss. I've had continuing bone loss. I have really no family history for it, and I'm not bedridden. And I really try to do my exercise to stimulate the bone. But let me just tell you just a 30-second thing about bone, and all of us have bones in this room. Everyone in this room has a bone in their body, at least one. The bones in your legs are the biggest legs, right? The femur bones. Where do you support most of your leg weight? Right on your femurs, right on your tibia and fibula, right? You're standing right here. So now when I'm in space, I've offloaded the weight on these bones. Your bones are living crystals. Your bones are living pieces of tissue. They have cells that reform, that lay down new bone and take off the old bone every day. You're not aware of them. These cells are working against each other. There are signals in the body telling them when to build bone, when to take it away. And it's obvious that they're very sensitive to gravity. So the stress I'm putting on my legs just standing here talking to you is more than an astronaut has in space. You're doing more to stay fit, even sitting, than an astronaut does in space. Even exercising 2 hours a day, your body's listening to the 22 hours when there is no gravity, colloquially put. How else do you stimulate bone? Well, just walking across here. What am I doing? Well, if you haven't learned it, you probably will. There are muscles in the legs, and where the muscles insert into bone to make them work is called a tendon. It's a very specialized part of the muscle. And so as you're pulling on muscle, the tendon's inserted in bone, and it stimulates the bone as well. So what do we do in space? We float around and look kind of cool, but we're not moving our legs. They're like tails. They just basically tether us so, we're like a piece of seaweed moving around. So in space flight, it is a huge problem that we have not solved. Even giving people extra calcium, your body pees it out in the first 24, 48 hours, and then it goes out in your stool, keeps spilling out of your body. And then if you give people all these new drugs and everything else, it doesn't help. So it tells us there are different mechanisms for bone loss than we thought there were. So a great experimental situation, but one that we don't particularly want as astronauts. But people who have osteoporosis when they get older, or they're young adults and bedridden from an accident or whatever, they're important things that we need to understand. So that's one of the huge long-term effects of spaceflight that we really need to study. Good question.
Thank you.
Well, that was great.
Are we done?
I think we're done.
Well,
Sure.
thank you. Can I just say thank you very much, JP, Alexander, and Taylor. Well done. Thank you. Thank you for your questions. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, JP, Taylor, and Alexander, and also the students back at the schools. Those were terrific questions. Very thoughtful and very insightful.
And I'd say, too, if I may, Mr. Turco, is that the questions that haven't been asked, if there are questions that people want to ask, if they go to my website and hit the contact info, we'll try to answer them. I'm sorry to get to all of them, but very exciting to be able to share what I could with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to now call on Maria Esposito, Superintendent for the Huron-Superior Catholic School Board, to bring thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Turco. It is an honor and a pleasure, Dr. Bondar, to thank you on behalf of the group here and on behalf of our virtual friends. Thank you for spending this morning a moment of your life with us, and for sharing your thoughts from your space log with us. This morning you reminded us the importance of remembering our roots and being connected to our past. You have encouraged us to surround ourselves with positive role models, with positive support systems. People will help us keep our dreams alive and achieve our dreams. You told us that we are what we become and that we need to give back to the community. Thank you for exemplary role model in staying true to your roots and for your ongoing support of Sault Ste. Marie. I cannot think of a better person to have as ambassador for our centennial year for Sault Ste. Marie. Our students have been enriched today because of your presence, because of your presentation. You have invited each one of them to outline their dreams and to make sure that they make those dreams come alive. And if they do that, they will be able to take an active role in improving their community, improving Ontario, Canada, and the world. Thank you on behalf of the Algoma District School Board, the Conseil Scolaire Catholique du Nouvel-Ontario, and Huron-Superior Catholic District School Board. We have made a donation to the Roberta Bondar Foundation in appreciation, a token of our appreciation, and we have a small gift here for you. So please accept this as a token of our appreciation. Thank you very much.
Merci. That's what I do. Thank you. Thanks very much. If I may, there's a picture on here that was in the Sioux Star of science fair contestants when I won the science fair in biology in the Sioux and went to the Canada-wide science fair. And like the picture of me coming back to the Sioux, I actually am very pleased to announce that I have a different haircut. Thank you.
Very nice.
Thank you very much. I recognize the woman on here. Thank you.
Wow. Fantastic. Hope you've had half as much fun as we've had listening to you. Just fantastic. Thank you very much. We're thrilled and honored that you were in our presence today, and we'll take your message to heart. Even at my young age, I will continue to have dreams. Thank you very much. I want to thank Greg Marshall, which I missed earlier, for the sound system. Fantastic job. I want to thank Mark Zorzit, principal. Where's Mark? Mark, stand up, take a bow. Appreciate your hospitality here. I want to thank, hello, Susie Chow. Nice to see you. Hello, George. Nice to see you. I want to thank the bus company for helping us out this morning. I want to thank the people back at the schools that have made all the arrangements. And I want to thank all the students back at the school who are listening to us. I hope that you will take the message and continue your studies and be inspired to keep your dreams alive and develop dreams and so on. And of course, I want to thank everybody here in the audience. It couldn't have been a better audience. You were fantastic. I'm going to dismiss you now. And the way I'm going to do that, I'm going to ask the people at the very back, start coming down. Then when the people at the back have come down, I'm going to start from the front, and we'll walk our way back. So I'll ask the people in the back to go to their buses now. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Hang on, you people sitting down here at the front. Let's let the other people out first.